Okay, waiting for notification. And boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening. We have an amazing guest with us, one who I'm very humbled and honored would take time out of her busy schedule to come give us some information as well as some inspiration. And that is none other than Sister Aisha Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Joshua. How are you?
I'm doing fine by the grace of Allah. My sister Naima is saying peace, and everybody's showing you love in the comments. Um, Sister Aisha, now you, your husband watched me and my siblings grow up, and I knew your son since we were children. But this is the first time that I can remember I'm having a chance, an opportunity to have a conversation with you. So this means a lot to me, and I look forward to learning from you. My sister Miriam says assalamu alaikum as well.
Wa alaikum
Yes,
salam.
ma'am. So when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Oh my. I first heard the teachings in 1968. And actually, I was staying with my brother who lived in Seattle. I moved from the South, from Louisiana to Seattle, Washington. And my brother used to get up very early in the morning and listen to classical music and different things. But this morning, that particular morning, he was listening to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's album, The Judgment of the World is Now. And
Mm.
for the first time, I heard words like Shabazz and original man and all of that. So I went in and asked him, what is that? And he said, oh, you don't need to know anything about that. So that was my very first time hearing about it. To
Praise
continue,
be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. And when did you first join and accept the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
I actually joined the nation in 1968 in the latter part, I think November or December. And what happened is that I used to, on the weekends, I would go out on the weekends. That was work all week and then party on the weekends. So this little store that I used to go to, this brother would be standing in front of the store with a Muhammad Speaks. And he always offered me the paper. And he would also invite me to the temple, which was temple at that time. And I used to always just kind of brush him off and say, brother, I got things to do. I don't have time. So finally, one time I did consent to go, and he said that they would send a car for me on Sunday, and which he did. And I ended up going to the mosque and actually stood up the very first time that I heard the teachings. And so that was like November, December of 1968.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. And what was the climate like towards the believers in 1968? And who trained you? And who were like the officials?
Oh, well, in Seattle, at that time, it was a study group. It was not a mosque. We didn't have a number per se when we first started. But I remember when I first joined the mosque, well, because actually when you look at what was going on in the 60s, Black people were just now waking up. They were just wearing naturals and, dashikis, and we were just talking about getting, alternative schools, and all of this was going on outside of the mosque. But when you look at what was going on, as far as Black people and their knowledge of Islam, it wasn't anything like it is today. When if you had a Muslim name, that was strange. Whereas now, you see athletes and celebrities, and they have different names. But I would say that because of the knowledge that was just new to all of us, and once we accepted Islam, we were such strong Muslims and we believed so strongly in what we did, and did not want our children in the devil's school. We actually wanted to practice Islam.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And how did your parents feel and your family feel about you accepting the teachings?
Oh, that's another story. I come from a Southern Baptist background. My father was a Baptist minister. My grandfather was a Baptist minister. And my great grandfather was a Baptist minister. So you would think, of course, that it was not accepted. And it was because they really did not know anything about Islam. And when I decided that I would become a Muslim, at that time, uh, I guess it was a rumor going around that if you ever joined the nation, you couldn't leave. If you decided that you were going to leave, that you would be killed. And so my mother was just very, very concerned about, my welfare. And, at that time, being a new Muslim, I think we had this kind of attitude that everything was confrontational. We just wanted to confront somebody about, the falsehood in Christianity and really to promote Islam that way. But I found out that, instead of confronting my mother and trying to argue with her, that I would just try to show her the example, of being a Muslim as compared to a woman of the world. And my mother, before she passed, may Allah be pleased with her, she loved the minister, and she would actually ask me for some of his lectures, which I would mail to her.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. And what happened? How did the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad departs in 1975? How did that affect you and your family?
Well, before we get to that part, can I just share this with you? My meeting the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am.
When
Please tell us about it.
when I was in the temple number 67 in Seattle, the sister who was the captain at that time was getting married. And in the meantime, a letter was received by the mosque, the minister at the mosque, that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted all of the captains to come in for examination.
Mm.
And the post was empty at that time. So the minister asked me, minister of the mosque, Minister George, asked me if I would go to Chicago. And I said, well, I don't want to be a captain. He said, no, you don't have to be a captain. Just go and just get the information so you can bring it back to the sisters. So I said, okay, I would go. And the sister, Martha 2X, accompanied me, who was a lieutenant. And when we got to the messenger's home, I remember that he had scheduled a meeting to meet with some ministers, and he canceled that meeting so that he could meet with the captains. And these were sister captains from all over the nation. And I was young, not really in the nation that long. So I really was just there, not really knowing what to expect. And when the letter said examination, I started reading Message to the Black Man, How to Eat to Live, because I thought it was just going to be a test, like you would take a written test.
Yes, ma'am.
When the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had us come into the dining room and we sat down and he started to talk, and he actually tried to make us feel comfortable by sharing some things with us about his life. And I remember he told us about his working for the railroad. And he said something about how the employees always trusted him, that they did not want to take their, money on the weekends and, spend it all. So they would give the money to him and let him keep the money for them. And he told us about how when he and Mother Clara first got married, that he used to ring the front doorbell and then run around to the back and, and have her come to the front looking for someone. So I began to kind of relax, after listening to him for a while. But one thing I remember distinctly that evening, one of the sisters, she was the only sister captain that he asked her marital status. And she said that he asked her if she was married. She said yes. And then he asked her for how long, and she said 10 years. And I remember he kind of applauded. And then he asked her if she had any children. And she said, no, sir, dear apostle, Allah has not blessed us with any children. And then he asked her if her husband wanted children. And she said, yes, well, he wants what I want. And I remember him telling her, he said, well, sister, maybe around this time next year, you will have a child. And I tried to keep up with her. And if I remember, once I got back to Seattle, I inquired, and she did have a child. So I knew that, I was sitting in the company of someone who was a very powerful man.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful. Yes, ma'am. And what was he wearing, Sister Aisha?
I remember this distinctly. He had on a blue suit, and I remember he had these glasses that were very beautiful glasses. They were like rose colored. And I remember that because when we got back to Seattle, my lieutenant had her some glasses made exactly like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But he had on a beautiful blue suit. I remember that.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful. And you were getting a lot of love in the comments, Sister Aisha.
All praises due to Allah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so now my follow-up question to that was, once the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad departed, how did that personally impact you and your family?
Oh, wow. That was a very, very painful time. Um, it was painful, and the fact that I wasn't really prepared for it, because, as you listen to some of the believers, they may share that they heard the messenger talk about, his departure, and that some of the ministers were told, and even some of the Muhammad University students were told that he was going to be leaving for at least 3 years. But where I was in Seattle, Washington, that was not taught. And I don't know if it was that the minister at the mosque at that time wasn't aware of it, or, just did not have an understanding of it. But I had no idea that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad would be departing. I mean, we went to Savior's Day that year, just as we prepared, every year. And the only thing that I do remember is that the year that he departed, that Savior's Day, the atmosphere was very, very different. And I remember we got there like a day before, because Savior's Day at that time was only one day. It wasn't like workshops and all of that. But the day before, the 26th, then we were called into a meeting at Muhammad University of Islam. And we didn't know what the meeting was about, but we thought that it was a security meeting, because generally the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, Elijah Muhammad, he would train us in securing, because we would have to handle crowds that maybe we were not accustomed to handling. So we thought this was just an extra security meeting. But when we got to the building, there was something in the atmosphere that we knew was very, very different. And I just remember once we got in, when they made the announcement that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had transpired, and we were, expired. We were just, I just think that my spirit left my body at that time, because I don't remember too many details after that, because it just seems like it was just not real. Um, I just remember, the believers, the sister that I was staying with for the weekend of Savior's Day, we couldn't really talk about it because it was just so painful. And then I think later on that evening, we were called all to a meeting. The tape that you've seen where the Honorable Louis Farrakhan stands up, because all of the ministers were pledging, their allegiance to Imam Wardeen Muhammad. And I remember the minister, there was something very different. The minister, everyone was just, I think, in the type of mode that, we're going to carry on, and, there's nothing that's going to uh, divide this nation. Because even at that time, there were those who thought that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan should be the one to step up. And there were some that, of course, thought the Imam should be the one. But when the Honorable Louis Farrakhan stood up and he was talking, I just remember that, his voice cracked, because, you could see that he was hurt. And after he spoke, when he sat down, the comments that were made after him let me know that there was some sort of rift, between, let's just say, the ones who wanted Imam Wardeen and those who felt like the Honorable Louis Farrakhan should stand up. But we were all very hurt. And when we got back home, it was all very, very different. Um, I think things didn't change immediately, but I remember that we were told that we no longer had to look like we had brain surgery, that, the garments, the uniforms that we wore, which we wore our uniforms every day. I remember that there was a calendar where it was sent out through each region so that the sisters would be in unity. And the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that he wanted a Caucasian, if he got off a plane in New York and he saw a sister, and he got on a plane in Atlanta and he saw a sister, he would think that he was looking at the same sister, because we all would be in the same color, because we all had the color code for the month. But I remember that it was a very sad time. I know of some who mentally lost their minds, who were put in an institution. Um, I saw people, go back to doing things that they were doing before. And, some people just lost belief in God, period, and lost belief in any type of leadership. I think for myself, it was very slow. I was still attempting to follow the Imam. And I actually attended the meetings until he talked about polygamy, and the brothers were given permission to practice polygamy. And that was the day that I walked away from the mosque at that time.
Mm, yes, ma'am. And okay, I want to thank you for your sacrifice, Sister Aisha, and I want to thank your family for their sacrifice as well, on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience. How did you know? You said there was a rift between the Most High Louis Farrakhan and Imam Wardeen. How did you get to acquainted with the Most High Louis Farrakhan back then? If you were all the way on the Like, how did y'all know him? Y'all heard him on the radio, saw him on TV? How did that happen?
Actually, I saw the Honorable Louis Farrakhan when he spoke at the University of Washington, and it had to be either 1971 or 72. But I remember when he came, and of course, we would listen to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan when he did the radio program, because you remember he filled in the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, asked him to teach for what, 6 months? And he ended up teaching for, I think he said 6 years. But he went on, and I would listen to the program every Sunday. And I especially enjoyed the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's teaching. I knew that there was something very special about the manner in which he broke down the teachings and the understanding that he had. But I was introduced to him when he spoke at the University of Washington. In fact, I don't, he probably would not remember this, but we fixed dinner for him. I remember at the little, we had a little bake shop and restaurant in Seattle that the believers had. In fact, that was how we ended up getting a temple, a mosque, because from the funds of, running that particular restaurant. But we fixed dinner for him that night. And I remember the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, I think, was accompanied by his secretary. And we were young, and we fixed dinner for him. I remember I stayed in the kitchen and I allowed the lieutenants to go out and to serve, because I was just that shy. I didn't want to come out and really talk to the minister. But I remember the minister was so very polite and gracious. He came back in the kitchen to thank us for the meal that we prepared for him. So that was my very first time seeing him.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Now, you getting a lot of love in the comments, Sister Aisha. And thank you all for continuing to watch the People's Podcast. What advice would you give to us now, especially the younger generations, about not repeating history when the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan departs, based off of what you saw when the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad departed?
Well, I would use myself as an example, because I was very young at that time, and I felt like I wasn't really aware of what was going on, because, at that time we didn't have study guides as we have now. Of course, I would listen to the lectures of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I always look forward to reading the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. I tried to gain as much knowledge as I could from the books of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But I think the young people today, the Muslims who are coming up now, you're blessed because you have the study guides, you have all of the lectures of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. So all of this can give you a strong foundation. If there's any questions or anything that would come up, you have a resource to go to. And also, the minister has said that he would appoint uh, a, a group of believers who would act as counsel. So you don't have to guess. There were conversations that were going around when the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad left, and we really did not have anyone that we could go to who we really felt could give us a good understanding of what was happening. I would also urge young people to build a strong relationship with Allah, so that whatever happens, and we don't know exactly how it's going to happen, we know that there's going to be another flood of propaganda. But if you have a strong foundation and your relationship with Allah is strong, then you can withstand, whatever comes.
All praises due to Allah. Yes, ma'am. And Sister Aisha, how did you go? What made you come back once the Most Honorable Louis Farrakhan stood back up?
Well, I was wrestling with that for a long time. I think I had seen some things happen that I knew that Islam was the only way for me. I tried going back to the church. I took my my children to church, and when they started shouting and the way that Christians respond in a meeting, my children got scared because they had never been in a meeting where, they would see people shouting and, what was going on. So I had to leave. Um, so I was trying to find some replacement, but I could not find anything that would replace Islam. So when I heard that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan was going to be teaching, I think it was at the Bonaventure Hotel, and the title, I think, was Let My People Go. I decided then that it was time for me to return. And so I went back to the first meeting, I think was at the Topographical Research Center in Los Angeles with Brother Minister Khalid Muhammad.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah. Okay, excellent. You're getting a lot of love. My sister's thanking you for the comments. Ali saying that's right. So many people in the comments saying beautiful. Okay, excellent. My next question for you, ma'am, is fear. In your time and tenure in the Nation of Islam, have you ever been faced with fear? And if so, how did you overcome that fear?
Well, I think basically, we all maybe have had times in our life. I can remember one moment, and it was when my home was shot into. And I'll give you the details. Every morning I used to get up around 3 or 4 so that I would have time to study before it was time for me to go to work. And I always studied in a particular place in the family room. I had a desk there, and I would read and, just study until it was time for me to get ready to go to work. Well, this one particular morning, for some reason, I said I wouldn't go and sit at that particular desk, that I would stay in the living room. And it just so happened that that morning, someone was standing at our garage and shot into, there was like a little picture window in my family room, and shot into that window. And the bullet lodged right in front of where I would have been sitting, which meant that the bullet would have had to go through my head. So I think I was a little disturbed at that time, but I wasn't afraid of, I think, of being hurt. I just didn't know, what had happened and who was behind it. I remember afterwards, one of our neighbors said that they saw someone standing in our garage. We never found out who did it. We don't know, who was behind it. But there was another time, I think in Seattle, the brother who invited me to the mosque, who was a lieutenant, uh, Donald Ponder. And Brother Demetric has mentioned him in his book. I think it's one of the unexplained deaths of a Muslim. He was a very, very beautiful brother. And as I said, he was one who had invited me to the mosque. Well, one morning we get up, and on the news, we hear that a body has been found in Lake Washington. And I was a little disturbed at that time because I didn't know exactly what happened. I don't think that has ever been solved. We still don't know, what was the reason, the motive, exactly what happened. But there was never a moment where I was afraid to be a Muslim. Even if our lives were threatened, we still felt at that time we had such a strong belief in Allah and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that, that would be enough to fortify us. So I can't say that, I may have felt something, but it didn't mean that I was not going to push through and continue.
All praises due to Allah. Beautiful. And a lot of people showing you love in the comments and saying beautiful. Wow. That's right. Excellent. And keep teaching, ma'am. Okay. My next question is, before we went live, we spoke of something that we have in common, which is the theater. Will you let
Yes.
us know about your love for the theater?
Yes, I was listening to your interview with Brother Abdullah, and he mentioned Black Arts West. And I thought that was interesting because we had a Black Arts West in Seattle. And I actually worked with Black Arts West for a while. I did a couple of plays with them. One was Days of Absence by Douglas Turner Ward, where all of the Black people would disappear in this southern town for one day. And then I think a couple of other plays. But yes, I, had a love for theater. And in fact, I was reading for a part uh, the same month that I went to join the nation. And it was a play that was going to be traveling from to Broadway. But
Hmm.
I found out when I went to read for the part, because I think it was entitled The Age of Aquarius, that at the end they were going to have a scene, a nude scene. So that was out. Um, and I also was told at that time that they did not think that a Muslim sister, this didn't come from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, mind you, but that they didn't think that a Muslim sister should be on stage. So I kind of just gave up on that because it wasn't that important, but I still have a love for the theater.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And Sister Aisha, my mother played in that same play, A Day of Absence.
Oh,
And
wow.
they would
Yes,
practice
sir.
at Muhammad University. And she would force me, this is before I had a love for the theater, and she would force me to go with them to those practices with a sister named Sister Winifred and Sister Margaret Mockley. All of them, they were all a part of that theater company. And I remember being forced to, so I'm familiar with Day of Absence. This is my point. I'm absolutely familiar with that. Yes, ma'am. And thank you all for the comments and all the people showing you love. When I speak to the brothers, we often talk about the most honorable minister Louis Farrakhan. But when the sisters come, I would like you to what about Mother Farrakhan? How has she helped you or been of assistance or inspiration to you?
Oh, brother. Mother Farrakhan is just such a very beautiful, genuine person. And she is very down to earth, very humble person, and also very straightforward. Um, I think she has been, even when she didn't realize that I was observing her, to actually see how, she conducted herself as a wife and mother. And when I look at her, I see humor, and I see the love that she has and the care she has for the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. As a matter of fact, uh, when I look at the children and how they take such good care of their mother and father, it's something to be observed. And to me, it is just a beautiful thing, to see them so dedicated and how they express and show their love for their father. But Mother Khadijah is a very, very special woman. She is very kind sister, and she has been such a beautiful and I think beautiful mother to my son Ali, because he has been around them a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
So I love Mother Khadijah.
Praise be to Allah. And I can't stress again this. Thank you for your sacrifice, and to see your son growing up, doing the work of his father is always amazing. Every time I see him holding posts, he reminds me so much of your husband. And you know, being a driller. Your husband. I would hear his voice. before we would go on stage with the drill competition, and it was always good to see him, in his element. What advice would you give to future wives?
Mm. You know, I think one of the things that I would advise is that for wives, and especially young wives, to realize, as the Honorable Louis Farrakhan has shared with us, that when you marry a man who has taken on this mission, then you also take on the mission. And there are times when you have to make sacrifices. There are times when your husband may not be, at home with you. He may have to travel due to this mission. There may be times when uh, you have to make financial sacrifices. But I would say that, all of it is worth it. And your relationship with Allah has to be so strong that you are realizing that your support is not just for your husband, but it is also for the nation as a whole. And also, I would say that, you know, prior to 75, I think we were so focused on the mosque. And a lot of times, it did not leave us a lot of time, a lot of extra time with our families. So, the children have to learn what sacrifice is. But I think that, if you're sacrificing and you love the nation and you have committed yourself, then I think the way that you demonstrate sacrifice, and it's not begrudgingly, then I think the children will accept it.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful. And I want to thank everybody for their comments and showing love. Sister Aisha, I have a few more questions for you, but I want to make sure we get a quick 60-second commercial break. To all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast, please cash app. If you want to make a donation, here we go. If you want to make a donation, please cash app the dollar sign, then the People's Podcast. I thank you all. We're coming up to our season. We only have 2 more interviews after this amazing interview, and the season will be over. May Allah bless all of the people who are watching. Street Premiere Media Production, my brother's company, has a 4K camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Thank you very much, Rashad, for your Street Premiere. My sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, both of which are on Amazon. Thank you very much, Sister Miriam. Sister Naima, Stay On Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country. Supreme Men's and Boys Urban Wear, if you want to get fresh and keep it dripping. Thank you very much for that. I want to thank, I see you all in the comments. Thank you, Sister Love, for always showing love as well. Raising Black Millionaires, Sister Tia Muhammad. She teaches economic empowerment and development through flashcards. I'm coming right back to you, Sister Aisha. Brother Kenneth Muhammad, bow tie maker extraordinaire. If you need some new bow ties, he will ship them to you across the country. Brother Todd X McGraw, Supreme Team Insurance Group, 80. Okay, you know the number. There it is right there. Thank everybody who's watching. A lot of people are showing you love. So Aisha, we coming right back, sir, because we have a few more questions so we can get some insight. Brother Chantel X, the X and Express. He hires truck drivers, pays them, and he does an amazing job with his trucking company. Brother Jabbar Muhammad, Client First Construction Incorporated, painting, carpentry, flooring, plumbing, etc. in the Chicago area, in the Memphis, Tennessee area as well. Sister Landra El Muhammad, More Than a Navy Beans. Thank you for your patience, Sister Aisha. I'm coming right back. Dr. Henry M. Carter, King Henry's Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Also, Brother Rashad Muhammad, COVID-19 Disinfecting Cleaning Services. Thank you very much, sir. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com. And last but not least, my 2 books, Cleopatra, which is on Amazon, and No Father, No Excuse, which is on Amazon as well. Thank you all for your support and donations to the People's Podcast. Now, Sister Aisha, the ministry. How did you get into the ministry?
Oh, actually, prior to 75, I've always been interested in just learning and knowledge. I'm kind of a bookworm. So I started when Imam Ward Dean took over, he allowed some of the sisters, because before you didn't have sister ministers, you only had brothers who were
Mm,
in the ministry.
mm,
And I remember I spoke a few times at the mosque before I left after Imam Ward Dean took over. But then when I came back under the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, I was still very interested in learning and in knowledge. And I remember Brother Khalid, Minister Khalid, asked for all of those who would be interested in attending a minister's class to come out that Saturday. And so I showed up. And I remember a brother was preparing the room for the meeting. And when I showed up, and I think I was the only sister, he said, "Oh, sister," he said, "you must have your days confused." He said, "This meeting is only for those who want to be ministers."
yes,
And I
ma'am.
said, "Sir, I'm not confused. I'm here for the right meeting." So, Brother Khalid Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, the very first time that he allowed me to teach was when someone had invited a class of models, sisters who were uh, models, to come out to the meeting.
Mm,
And he asked me that night to carry the lecture, which I did. And so every now and then after that, I would open up for, the ministers. I've opened up for Brother Minister Wazir. May Allah be pleased with him. And of course, Brother Iman Muhammad. I've
yes, ma'am.
opened up many times for him. Well, one speaking engagement for the Honorable Louis Farrakhan at a church, I opened up for him. And the minister, when I got back to the hotel room, we were serving the minister dinner. And the minister mentioned, he said, "Oh," he said, I heard that, you were preaching or something," he said. And, I said, "Yes, sir." And afterwards, he called me on the phone. And in the conversation, he told me that I could represent him anywhere as minister. So that's how that occurred.
Praise be to Allah. So, do you mean to say, Sister Aisha, that Muslim women aren't oppressed and what I'm saying, and you all have freedom? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. In fact, that was one of my objectives. I really wanted, women to know that, we were not walking 5 paces behind our men, and that we were not oppressed, and that there was freedom, justice, and equality in Islam.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. That's amazing. And people are showing you love in the comments as well. My next question for you, ma'am, is what has been your greatest trial in your tenure in the nation, and how have you overcome that trial?
Oh, well, I've had a lot of trials in the nation,
Yes, ma'am.
but I think one, I'll go back to when I shared with you how the minister in Seattle asked me to go to Chicago to get the information and come back.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, when I came back, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad sent a letter to the mosque stating that I was accepted as captain. And so that was not, my intention. But of course, if the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it, then, I would do that. So anyway, I stayed in that position for a while. Now, if you come back to this side, under the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, almost the same identical thing happened.
Mm,
Brother Khalid asked me if I would go. They were asking for all of the officials to come into Chicago. And at that time, one of the sisters, I don't know if she was getting married, but I know she was being relieved of that position. And there was no one in the position. So he asked me if I would go, and I told him, well, I don't want to be a captain. That's not why I came back. I didn't want a post that I just came back to help. And he said, oh, that's fine. We'll just go so that you can get the information and come back to share with the sisters. Well, when we got to the meeting, it was at the Final Call building at that time because we had not gotten Mas Mariam back. Before the meeting was over, Brother Khalid stood up and asked Minister Farrakhan if he had met the new regional sister captain. And I stood up because, he asked me to stand up. What was I going to do then? And the minister, that's when he said, I have a name for you. And the minister turned around and he walked off the rostrum. And I thought, well, I'm just now coming back. So, that name will be for later. Well, that evening we went to a tribute at Operation Push that was being given in honor of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I was riding with Brother Khalid and his wife, Sister Khalida, and Brother Amin, may Allah be pleased with him, our secretary. And Brother Khalid said, because we were all in a little car, and he said, push over, Aisha. And I didn't know who he was talking to because my name was Geraldine at that time. And that's when he shared with me, he said that he had met with the minister, and the minister said that from that day forward, I would be known as Aisha Muhammad. And as the former sister Captain Aisha shared, he never told me the meaning of that name. So I've always been searching for the meaning of it. But that was a couple of the trials since I've been in the nation.
Yes, ma'am. What has been your greatest joy in your tenure in the nation?
Oh, well, I really think that the greatest joy is really serving, is really helping to dispel the myth that women are oppressed, in the nation. And, for me, Islam is always new. I love this, body of knowledge. And, I can remember when prior to 75, we would sit up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, just discussing, the supreme wisdom. So Islam is my greatest joy.
Excellent. Yes, ma'am. And what do you do for fun, Sister Aisha?
Oh, well, I listen to music. I like all kinds of music. Of course, I like R&B, Al Green, Luther, Vandross.
Okay.
I love the Fugees.
Okay.
I like rap. I like country and western, Charlie Pride.
Yes, ma'am.
And jazz. I mean, I just like all kinds of music. Some of the things that I do for fun, of course, is reading. I love to read. And I like sketching. That's something that I've been doing lately. I started with my grandchildren, and I find that, it's very relaxing and fun. And of course, I love forensics. Anything that has to do with forensics, um, I like. And I guess you said that's kind of strange for fun, but I always find it very interesting, how they come about finding out when someone died or what they died of and that kind of thing. I love playing with my grandchildren. That's fun. I think that's about it.
Praise be to Allah. Excellent. And Sister Aisha, will you ever write a book about your personal life?
I've been asked about that, and I think maybe I will.
Allahu Akbar. Excellent. And Sister Aisha, may I have the exclusive? When you finish your book, can you come back to the People's Podcast to give us the exclusive so we can talk about it and promote it for you?
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. No problem. The honor is mine. I thank you all for the comments. Everybody showing you love in the comments. Thank you all for your constant support. Brother Ghazi says Sister Aisha is a true sister and a great spiritual guide and inspiration. Brother Stephen is giving you the greeting, Sister Rachel. Everybody's showing you nothing but love in
Praise
the
God.
comments. Yes, ma'am. My next question is, what do you want your legacy to be, ma'am?
Well, I think what I would really want my legacy to be is one of a sister or one of the women who defended the sterling character of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. I would love to have that opportunity.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. Well, this has been so many people saying all praises to Allah in the comments. Thank you. You've been teaching right on. Excellent. Great interview. Thank you all. I want to thank you, Sister Aisha, because I feel so connected to you now that I know more about you and I've learned your history. And I can't stress to you enough that I thank you for your sacrifice. And I thank Brother Ali, um, the son of the great captain, Brother Wali, for his sacrifice and to see him walking in the footsteps of his father. That makes me proud every time I see him holding posts, and I'm sure it makes you proud as well. So shout out to Brother Ali and you, Sister Aisha, for your sacrifice. May Allah continue to bless you, ma'am. And thank you all for watching the People's Podcast.
Thank you so much, brother. You have really inspired me from the time that I started watching the podcast. I've seen, the podcast grow. I've seen the sponsors grow. And I think that, it is wonderful what you're doing. It's very inspiring and it's kept me up late some nights just watching some of the interviews. But thank you very much for having me. And I'm very honored.
Praise be to Allah. And thank you, Sister Aisha, for your comments on YouTube, because that's what drew my attention. I thank everybody for their comments. And if you all have any recommendations of people that I could interview and give me some insight, because Sister Aisha just put a lot of pieces into the puzzle of our great nation tonight. So I thank you, Sister Aisha, and I thank you all for watching the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.